Hey guys, I hope y'all are having a great morning. We have a very busy day ahead of us. Our nighttime temps have finally come up above 50 degrees, so I am going to try to plant out as much as I can. And my number one priority today is tomatoes. I'm gonna go ahead and prep this third row here. You can see there's T-posts and cattle panels. I'm gonna trellis my tomatoes with cattle panels this year. I used to do the Florida weave and I just was not successful with that. So we're gonna use this method. But we've had some really heavy rains, and those rains have washed a lot of my dirt down and a lot of my wood chips on top of my rows. So I need to kind of clean this row up first, and then the kids and I are going to get the cattle panels onto the T-posts with some zip ties. So that is our first task of the day. So like I mentioned before, we had some heavy rains, so I'm just going through and making sure that the wood chips are all raked back and trying to get some of that soil back into the rows that have washed out. Then Vincent and I started to mount the cattle panels to the T-posts, and we were just using zip ties for this. As we were going down the row, I realized that one of the T-post rows was actually set too far out, and if I left them where they were, I was going to end up actually planting into my wood chips. So we had to use a T-post puller and then a T-post pounder to reset that row. If I had left them where they were and planted in that mulch, my tomato plants really would have suffered. As wood chips break down, they rob the soil of nitrogen, and your plants just won't do well in wood chips. I was actually pretty surprised that Vincent was able to help me with this task and pound these T-posts in the night before he and Nate had gone down to the garden in the dark to set the T-posts. And so that is why that first row was a little bit further out, because they couldn't really see what they were doing. So anyways, we ended up pulling them and it was fine. And then we went ahead and mounted all of the cattle panel here. And I think that this trellising method is going to work really well. Like I had mentioned before, the Florida weave, sometimes those tomato plants, they get so big, and with so many plants, it's very hard to prune them and keep up with them constantly. So the Florida weave method, they get so heavy that they sort of fall over and the twine can't quite hold them up like these T-posts and cattle panels will. So I'm excited to try this method this year. All right, now on to the fun part. So I'm just setting out my tomato plants here. I'm gonna end up planting about 70 plants, and I'm spacing them out just to get the right spacing. I did about 18 to 24 inches between each plant. And I started digging the holes with a little hand shovel, and it just was pretty tedious. And so I called Vincent back and he grabbed a big shovel for me, and he dug the holes while I planted the plants, which was super helpful. We're planting mostly Amish paste tomatoes because those tend to be really good for canning. We'll be doing marinara sauce, salsa, diced tomatoes, crushed tomatoes, and all that kind of stuff. The Amish paste tomatoes have less gel and less seeds, and so you don't spend as much time cooking them down to get rid of that water content that you would with like a beefsteak tomato. I am also going to plant some other varieties like terracotta, German Johnson, Cherokee Purple, and my favorite, Brandywine. And then I also have some cherry tomatoes up at the house, but those are just closer so that we can grab those for a quick salad at dinner time. As I'm planting the tomatoes, I'm amending each hole with blood meal for nitrogen to get some good growth and nice green leaves. I'm also putting in some Epsom salt for magnesium, which is needed for chlorophyll production. Without chlorophyll, your plants cannot do photosynthesis, so you really need that in there as well. And then I'm also putting in some crushed eggshells for calcium to prevent blossom end rot. The eggshells that we get from the chickens, I let those dry in the sun. I crush them up and then powder them in my Vitamix to make sure that those are nice and broken down so that the plant can actually take up that calcium. All the kids helped me with this project and it made it go a lot faster, but I guarantee there was a little bit of bickering and a bit of arguing. So don't think that this whole lifestyle is just picture perfect like it looks on this video. It was hot, everybody was getting cranky, and that's just the way things go sometimes. But that's okay, we worked together and we got it done. All right guys, so I got about 70 tomato plants planted out. I still have more up at the house, but today didn't go exactly as planned and I didn't get as much done as I hoped to, which is pretty typical. So it looks like tomorrow I'm gonna have to come back down and try to get the rest of my stuff out as long as the rain holds off on us. But anyways, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a great rest of your day.